This is another video from accounting101.org. In this video, we're going to talk about how to pass the CPA exam on the first try. So what we're going to go over is a few of the main things that you can do to really increase your chances of passing on the first time. So before we get into this, make sure you go to the site accounting101.org/cs and get my CPA exam cheat sheet. This has some of my best tips. It's all organized just on one page, so you can download this and instantly read it. And that'll give you some of my best tips for passing the CPA exam. Okay, so let's get into these. Step 1. The first step is to set your date and stick to it. So what I see a lot of people do, and a lot of my colleagues, they'll schedule their tests and then they do a crappy job of studying. Basically, they don't study, they don't take it serious, or they just kind of procrastinate, and it gets to be a month, 3 weeks, then 2 weeks, and they just realize they have no chance. So they move the date back. And the problem is that was an option in their head the whole time. So this comes back to just commitment in general. And it's kind of that principle, or that, maybe not principle, phenomenon of how, you could, this isn't a good example because when you were in college, you could procrastinate a 5 or 10 page research paper till the last day or two and still get it done. My point here is that by the day that thing was due, you had it done. And because it was out of your control, you couldn't change the dates when that paper was due, you found a way to get it done. Now, I'm not saying you can procrastinate and do the same thing, because that's just not how it works. My point is that, or the parallel, is that you need to set your date and not allow yourself to break that date no matter what. Don't let personal things get in the way. Don't let family things get in the way as much as possible. A family reunion, not an excuse. A big unplanned wedding or a funeral, obviously, that's just, you do what you have to do. But things that are in your control, do not let anything get in your way of the dates that you set for your exams. Now, one example, I'm not a big bragger, but when I found out that I had failed FAR the first time, I still had audit scheduled for a certain date, which was like a month and a half away. And I kept studying. Well, I spent most of my time going forward restudying for FAR because that was the bad one. And I set it as soon as I got my new NTS, and it ended up so that I only had a week in between my retake of FAR and audit. And I refused to move back audit. And my senior at work, when I told him that, I could tell he thought I was an idiot, but he was too nice to say anything to me. I wouldn't have changed it anyways. But I just got it done, and I passed both of them. So it's possible. Don't let your dates, do not move your dates back. If you want to move it sooner, then go ahead and do that. Again, when I was studying for reg, I was ahead of my study plan, and we had a big job coming up at work. I knew I was going to be busy when I had reg scheduled, so it's annoying. I paid the $30 to move it, but I moved it up a week instead of back a week. So if you're ready sooner, if you're peaking at the right time, then by all means move your test up. But do not allow yourself the option. Don't make it an option in your mind to be able to move the test back, because guaranteed you will end up moving it back and doing a crappy job of studying. Okay, so the next step here is to make the concepts your own. What this means is, in the study process, what you're really trying to do is learn the material as much as possible. The problem is there's so much material, especially on FAR and regulation, that it's really impossible. You'd be memorizing the tax code and internalizing it if you were actually going to learn everything. But the big main things, and your CPA study course will do a good job of kind of pointing these out. Hopefully it will. The big main things, the frameworks, the things that you need to know as you're studying, you need to. One of the most helpful things for me was to talk things out loud. I would talk through concepts out loud. I would talk through problems. I would read these explanations to myself out loud, and that really helped. And I would keep explaining it to myself till I understood it. And then what I would do is I would make a flashcard. So if you've read my other posts, I would make flashcards with a free flashcard app or service, I guess. I use Brainscape, and I really like the way that the flashcards work once you have them made on your iPhone or Android, whatever, your mobile phone. The other one out there is Quizlet, I think. But make your own flashcards as you go and write these things in your own words. That's extremely helpful. You need to really understand the concepts. So that's, as far as learning the stuff, that's my most helpful tip, is be able to explain these things to yourself in your own words and get it to the point that you get it, that you understand. So step 3 is to make your studying count. Again, this was my experience my first time around on FAR. I knew I was doing a crappy job of studying. I was overwhelmed with how much material there was. I would turn on the lecture, press the play button, and tell myself, okay, I'm studying. Clock starts, this lecture's playing, I'm studying. But that's not really studying. I mean, if you're sitting up straight, if you're paying attention and you're engaged in the lecture, which is tough to do, then you're studying. If you're taking their words in and it makes sense to you and you're getting something out of it, then okay, yes, you're studying. But if you press the play button, your thoughts go somewhere else. You have a golf tournament on your other monitor. That I did that all the time. You're not studying. You're not learning anything. You are just flat out wasting your time, and you'll fail the test. So you need to do what, I didn't coin this term, but active studying. You're sitting up straight. You're paying attention on purpose. You're consciously thinking, okay, I'm staying engaged. I'm paying attention. You kind of have to refresh that idea in your mind just constantly as you're sitting there studying. And like I've said in some of my other posts, just watching the lectures is not the most effective thing anyways. You should start with the questions. But that's not one of the things I'll get into on this video. The other thing is just answering questions and then reading the explanation. This goes back to my last point of making the concepts your own. It's easy to tell yourself that you're studying, that you've spent, I studied for 2 hours today. It sucked. I'm spending all this time studying. I don't feel like I'm learning anything. And that's really that comes down to you. That's a choice that you make if you're learning anything or not. And so it's a lot easier. Someone who's actively studying, you can get more done. You can learn more in an hour than someone who's just doing kind of a half-assed job of studying for 3 or 4 hours. And that is what I did basically the entire time I was studying for FAR the first time. I would turn on the lecture. 10 minutes later, I would realize I hadn't really been watching it, or I had no idea what they'd talked about. Then I would try to read the lecture or read the chapter and get bored of that or space out for 10 minutes and then try some questions, not get anything because I hadn't learned anything yet. And then I'd be 40 minutes into a study session and just that feeling of overwhelm and, oh my gosh, it's been 40 minutes. This is like my third week. I've learned nothing. And I think that's just how most people go through this because they're not actively studying. So make your study sessions count. You can get more done in less time. Step 4 is to always be studying. And I had an app on my phone, my iPhone, and I just decided that I was going to not play games anymore. I was not going to play any more Angry Birds. Any of my downtime, I wasn't going to read CNN or read ESPN. The only thing that I would do when I pulled out my phone was to turn on my app and answer 5 to 10 questions, multiple choice questions. So I would do that I mean, really, when you commit to not doing anything else with your phone, you pull your phone out like 20, 30, I don't know, 50 times a day. It's crazy how much you use your phone when you stop doing the normal time wasting things that are a little bit satisfying. So I would pull my phone out, do 5 to 10 questions, and 20 times a day, 30 times a day, that's an extra 50, 60, 100 questions a day sometimes. And that was extremely helpful. That's one of the few things that I feel like bridge the gap that most people don't do, during their study process. Because if you're looking at these multiple choice questions that often throughout the day, that stuff sticks in your mind pretty well, and it doesn't take very long to get good at this stuff. It reminds me of when in college, when Guitar Hero was popular. I would play that stupid game every day, and I remember like finishing a song on Expert and nailing it, and then seeing that South Park episode where they point out how stupid it is to get good at Guitar Hero, and just feeling like an idiot. But the thing I realized is that something that you do every day, it's crazy how fast you'll get good at it. So if you follow all these points, everything added up, doing things every day, making your studying count, pulling out your mobile app 20 times a day and doing 5 questions besides your core study time, you pretty much, there's no option but for you to pass at that point if you're doing that much studying. And that's what you have to do. It sucks, but that's what you have to do. So step 5 is to make the commitment. And this just covers all the other points, and this really kind of ties in with what I was just talking about. So not just during the day, but my favorite thing was to watch TV on Netflix at night when I was going to sleep. And I finally decided, especially after I failed FAR one time, I just thought, I'm not doing this again. I'm not doing retakes. I'm not paying these guys $200 every time to fail these tests again. I'm not doing this again. And so I swore off Netflix, watching TV, sports for the most part, which sucked. And I would just pull out my app. I would have my 2 hours of core study, like actual study time, on my actual computer in the mornings. And then throughout the rest of the day, the only thing I did was look at questions, go through questions. Or flashcards, I would do that too, but mostly multiple choice questions. And you just have to make that commitment that it's going to suck, your life's going to suck, or you're not going to have a life. Forget about having fun or quote-unquote having a life. That's something I still hear all the time at work, people saying, oh, I still want to have a life. Well, that's great, but for me, with the CPA exam hanging over my head, everything was fake fun. I couldn't enjoy anything because this exam was hanging over my head. So just put all that stuff on hold and pass these off in a few months. It's possible. You just have to make the commitment and decide to do it. So those are my best tips about how to make sure you pass the first time. Again, make sure you go to this link, accounting101.org/CS, and get my CPA exam cheat sheet. Leave a comment under the video or leave a comment on the page if you're actually on the blog post page for this video. And thank you for watching.